returning with us tonight. Hannah Smith returns in the stunning new adventure in the New York Times bestselling series from the author of the Doc Ford novels. The 20-year-old unsolved murder from Florida's pot-hauling days gets Hannah Smith's attention, but so does a more immediate problem. A private museum devoted solely to the state's earliest settlers and pioneers has been announced, and many of Hannah's friends and neighbors in Sulphur Wells are being pressured to make contributions. The problem is the whole thing is a scam. And when Hannah sets out to uncover whoever's behind it, she discovers that things are even worse than she thought. What follows is Deceived, which is one of Randy's best works. Randy Wainwright is the author of 20 Doc Ford novels and 4 novels of nonfiction. He lives on Sanibel Island, where he was a light tackle fishing guide for many years. We're very pleased to have him with us back again. Please welcome Randy Wainwright.
You're really good. My God, I can't follow that. Gee, Willie. And he actually said my name right. That's, I have been inducted, and it was very proud when I found out. I was inducted into the Elmer Fudd Hall of Fame, Wendy Wainwright, and I'd never tried to say my whole name aloud when I chose a name, when I wrote my first novel under my own name back in 1989. And there was a football player named Randy White. I thought, well, by golly, I don't want to be confused with him. In hindsight, I wish I'd just made it Randy White, because the book came out, my full name, and my dear departed mother, Georgia Wilson White, from Richmond County, North Carolina, and my 6 aunts or aunts, and my 5 uncles from Hamlet and Rockingham, North Carolina. I knew I was in trouble when they said Randy Wayne, but I'd never tried to say the whole name together. And so the book came out. I was with my friend Peter Matheson doing some kind of NPR TV show, and I had to do an introduction. Hi, and they had dummy cards. This is absolutely true. And my friend Peter Matheson, this brilliant writer, this eloquent guy. Mitch and Peter are very much on that level of eloquence. That's true, by the way. That's absolutely true. And my friend Peter is waiting for me to do this introduction, reading the dummy cards. And the introduction went something like this. Hi, I'm my full name. Welcome to Southwest Florida. Take 1. Hi, I'm Randy Wainwright. Take 2. Hi, I'm Randy Rain. Take 3. And it went on for 6 or 7 takes, and I finally got it right. Hi, I'm Randy Wayne White. And then I was so dumbfounded I'd gotten it right, I couldn't go on. And my friend Peter said, I'm not so GD sure you are him anymore. So anyway, what a great introduction. And thank you, folks, for coming tonight. And thank you, Books and Books. And I've told this story before, but years ago, when my first novel came out, Sanibel Flats, I could not give the book away. No, I mean I couldn't give it away. People stopped by the house, and I would try to give it away, and they wouldn't take it. But Mitch, and he was on the beach at that time, I stopped by a store, and I think Mitch did the 2nd signing ever for Sanibel Flats. And thank you so much. We're not for stores like this, Books and Books, the strong, independent bookstores. I would be on a boat or in a ditch somewhere. I would not be here, because at Books and Books and the other small independents, people actually read books, and they hand sell them. So when my first 3 or 4 books came out, the salespeople, the store owners, would say to their clients, and this is like a concierge book service, really. They would say to the clients, this is pretty good. And that really kept me in the writing business. So to come back here, it's an honor, it's a delight, and I want to thank you folks for being here. So I am here for you, and if you have any questions, I will happily answer them, and if not, or I'll make up the answers if I don't know the answers. But so I'm here for you. Any questions? We can. Yes, young lady.
How and when do you determine the title of your book?
How and when do I determine the title of my books? Well, that's a good question. It varies. Sometimes the title just seems to go with the book. All the books have a working title, and most books, the title comes about midway or later in the process. My editor, Neil Nyron at G.P. Putnam's, he's wonderful and brilliant, and he's also the publisher of Putnam's. And Neil's very good at titles, and he seems to know what sells. And so we kind of interplay back and forth about what works and what doesn't. I like the title Deceived. It was hard for me to spell. I'm not a good speller, but I finally have it down. But interesting question. Anything else?
Any other questions?
We good? Well, I'm going to talk a bit about Hannah Smith, and I'll go back to my maternal family in Richmond County, North Carolina. I grew up spending every summer of my life in Richmond County, which historically was the poorest county in North Carolina. And recently, in the last few years, it's become the second or third poorest, so we're doing better. It's a cotton mill town, and it's a farming town, right on the South Carolina border. It is deep south. And a wonderful place, delightful people. And my mother and my 6 aunts or aunts and my 5 uncles, I grew up listening to this wonderful lyrical exchange and interchange of conversations. And particularly the women, my mother and my aunts. And in Hannah, try to capture or anchor that wonderful voice. It's a challenge. It's also a delight, because my mother and my aunts were and are the funniest human beings I've ever met. They all, with one exception, dropped out of school before the 8th grade, which is very typical of that generation. But that did not slow their education one bit, because they read books. And to listen to these very strong, independent, opinionated, and very funny Southern women exchange barbs and stories and information, it really stuck with me. So now to try to bring that back in Hannah Smith, it's a hoot. It's an absolute delight. And I adore Hannah Smith. Did you have a question, Mitch?
Yeah, no, I was going to ask you something about Hannah Smith. And how did you transition from writing about a primarily male character to, writing about a female character? Other than just channeling these women, what did you have to do as a writer to kind of crawl inside of her in that sense?
Well, I've never thought about it in that way, but very good question. Well, the flippant answer is I had to learn a lot about shoes. Yet we all start out the same, physiologically, do we not? We do. Our sexual equipment isn't defined until fairly late in life, as in about 3 or 4 or 5 years old. We all start the same. And I think we're all motivated, driven, allured by the same instincts. I think so. I certainly hope so. We are not that different, despite all the jokes and the baloney about men are from Venus, or however that goes. We're not all that different. The shoe thing, however, with women, I do not understand. But I have learned a great deal about shoes. So when I wrote the first novel in what's now a Hannah Smith series, it was supposed to be a standalone novel. And writers do that at a certain point in their career. You do a standalone. And my wonderful editor at Putnam's, Neil Nyron, when I came up with this idea, and when I write a synopsis, it consists of about 3 or 4 sentences, and that's true. Neil had the confidence in me to say, yeah, it sounds pretty good, right from the female point of view. That's unusual, isn't it? Of course, I have a feminine side. It's my left side, I think, but I just wrote as honestly as I could from the viewpoint of my aunts and my mother. And again, that wonderfully lyrical Southern voice, the independent voice, it really stuck with me.
Well, what's so interesting is I'm going to hog all the questions.
Get over here.
What's so interesting about that is that we've had a lot of Southern writers come and speak to us. And I remember Ron Rash, for instance, who wrote a book called Serena that recently came out. He, too, talked about the influence that he had by his Southern grandmother, who would take him into the woods. They'd go on long walks, and he would be very quiet, but she'd be telling one story after another after another.
They can be a talkative.
And I got very jealous because I don't necessarily come from that tradition where I remember hearing stories my whole life. So why isn't it that every Southerner becomes a writer?
Probably alcohol or race cars. I don't know. But I don't know. I don't know. But and I was born in the Midwest, so I was kind of a hybrid, I guess. But it is true that maybe not only Southern women, but they love to tell stories, and they are wonderful depositories of local history and ghost lore, which I loved as a child, and I still love. And grew up listening to these ghost stories and the family histories. And my grandmother, Rilla K. Renee Wilson, my grandmother was born on the Cherokee Reservation in North Carolina. And she was a fireball. She grew up under very tough circumstances, actually lived under houses for a while. Rilla Wilson. And that woman, you did not cross her. She was not a big woman, but she carried a gun, and she carried a gun for a reason. Rilla, my grandmother, was a very, very tough Wilson person, and also very smart.
Anyone else in the audience?
Hold on. John, how are you? One of my friends from Panama.
Sure. Twofer question, going way back. What prompted you to change the viewpoint of Doc Ford from third person to first person in Captiva? And secondly, in Hannah Smith, when you were writing the first novel, did you channel these women from memory, or are some of them still alive to talk to?
That's a good question, John. Doc Ford, when I changed from third person to first person, I don't know why. I just follow my characters, and they have their own lives. They do indeed. If that sounds like schizophrenia, so be it. But they have their own lives and just seem to call for third person. At a certain point in the books, and I truly can't remember where, I began switching from first person to third person in alternate chapters. And my editor, Neil Nyren, when I always send in the first 40,000 words to make sure I'm kind of on track. And he called me. He said, you know, this is very risky. You're not supposed to do this. I said, I didn't know I wasn't supposed to do it. And but no one ever mentioned it. No one has ever mentioned it. So it seemed to work. I don't know. I follow my characters and go where they may. The second question, what did I have to, when I channeled? I still have some of my aunts in North Carolina still alive. My Uncle Levon Wilson, still alive. My Uncle Carl. My Aunt Authorina. Is that a great name? Authorina? Now that's a family of storytellers there. She's still alive. So I love going back there. I get on the train in Tampa, Amtrak, and about 5 p.m., and I get a sleeper car, have a nice dinner, bottle of wine, go to sleep, wake up at 6 a.m. I'm in Hamlet, North Carolina. I got a car waiting for me. One of my uncles is there. And Hamlet is this tiny little, it would be a great film setting. It is Mayberry, and it's off the beaten track. So I do go back, and I love going back. And I wish there was an ocean there, but there's not. I'd buy a farm. So anyway, I do want to tell you about in Deceived. One of the elements in the plot, it has to do with this. And it's based on an all too sadly real story. And the real story is this. I have a house on Pine Island in Lee County, Southwest Florida. It's the oldest house in our county, Lee County. And the house sits on the remnants of a shell pyramid, an acre on the bay. When I say shell pyramids, I mean pyramids. The indigenous people of the Southwest coast, and here as well, they had no stones or rocks. They built pyramids of shells, east-west pyramids. We know that's true because in the late 1890s, the Smithsonian sent an anthropologist to Southwest Florida. His name was Frank Hamilton Cushing, and he explored some of these islands on the Southwest coast. And he did drawings of what the mounds looked like then, and they were very demarcated. Four-sided pyramids with flat tops. We know they were pyramids, built by contemporaries of the Maya, the Aztec, the Olmec, the Toltec, a major civilization on this coast. In the book Deceived, one of the primary elements, as I said, has to do with Hannah Smith's mother lives essentially in what is my house in Pine Island, the oldest house in the area, up atop the remnants of a shell pyramid. And people buy the property next to her, which includes a higher pyramid. And these people brought in backhoes and bulldozers, and they absolutely destroyed that mound, that pyramid. They trucked it off, and they built this gigantic cement house, McMansions, I guess you would call them. Not only that, and again, this is true, not only that, they trucked off essentially 3,000 years of Florida history, and they wouldn't tell the archaeologists where they had it dumped. That's true. So it's a primary element in this novel conceived, in my novel Deceived. And to draw upon those actual happenings, particularly when it kind of makes you mad, it's, to me, it's at least powerful.
How much research did you have to do in order to find out about all of that?
Yeah. Research, for those of you who are writers here, and my guess is you wouldn't be here were you not writers. By virtue of being readers, we are all there. We are therefore writers. I truly believe that. Unless you're homeless. I don't see any homeless folks here. But research is one of the funnest aspects of writing because you learn so much. It's also an invidious excuse not to write, so you have to be careful of it. I tend to do way too much research. But because I've lived in this area for so long, I knew much about the indigenous people. In that regard, I didn't have to do that much research. But in Deceived, another primary element has to do with charities and fake charities in Florida. In Florida, there are more than 50,000 registered charities, more than 50,000. Most of them very good causes. I'm not surprised because I hear from all of them. I suspect you do too. But there are also some fraudulent ones. And the elderly in our state of Florida, this amazing state in which we live, are easy targets. More often than not, they have money. They've built up a life savings. Too often, they're lonely and unattended, and they are easy targets for outside scammers. So the book Deceived has to do with that as well. So, anyway, anything else? We can get to sign. Yes, sir.
We fish in Boca Grande all the time, and there's
Yes.
a couple of guides there that claim to know you. But my question is, when you first started, were you a guide that wanted to write, or you were a writer that was guiding?
I was a fishing guide who wanted to write, and that's a very good question, sir. Thank you very much. I was a fishing guide at Tarpon Bay on Sanibel for more than 13 years, did more than 3,000 charters, was on the water at least 300 days a year. That's a lot. That is a lot. But for whatever reason, like you, I fell in love with books, probably like you, early in life. And I came to hope, I didn't believe, but I came to hope that if I could write a book, maybe I could become part of the magic I found in books. And never thought I was smart enough or talented enough to do it. Certainly didn't have the background to do it. But when I was a fishing guide, I would get up early and write. And for a fishing guide, that's getting up really early in the morning. Or I'd stay up later, or oftentimes both. I worked very hard at learning this difficult craft of writing. And when I was a fishing guide, I had a big break. If I've had one great break in my life, it was this. Rolling Stone founded a magazine called Outside Magazine in 1977 or 1978, and I was a full-time guide. And it was a beautiful magazine. It was the first of the outdoor travel adventure magazines. Jan Werner, the founder of Rolling Stone, it was his idea. And the first year that Outside was published, they had an incredible staff of writers. Tom McGuane, Jim Harrison, Hunter S. Thompson, Peter Matheson. I mean, this was, it was like the books and books of magazines. And that is not a false compliment. That's pretty accurate, actually. And so I saw this beautiful magazine, and I wrote a story, and I sent it in. over the transom, they call it in the business, the magazine business. And as I know now, because I'm an editor at large for Outside, we get thousands of submissions a month, thousands. But out of all these submissions, someone picked out this story I wrote. And the editor of Outside at that time was Terry McDonald, who's hosted Saturday Night Live and the editor of Sports Illustrated and others, Men's Journal. And Terry McDonald called me on the phone. And Terry is a very abrupt, plain-spoken guy, kind of gruff. And to get a hold of a fishing guide in those days, you had to call the marina at lunchtime. It's absolutely true. It's the only way they could get a hold of me. And so I get a Mac, who ran our marina, calls, Randy, you got a call? And Randy, it's Terry McDonald. I said, yes, sir. I'm thinking he wants to book my boat for a charter. I'm the editor of Outside magazine. Oh, gee whiz, I'm so glad you called. We got your story. We can't use this. Oh, well, thank you for calling. No, we want you to try something else. And I did. I wrote a story the first year that Outside was published. And it was about Florida, backcountry Florida. And Outside magazine really kept me writing because fishing is such a full-time deal. I mean, you're up before first light and you're catching bait. And usually I was done about sunset. And, then you go to bed, then it's the same thing over and over and over. And just keeping up on the fish and where the fish are, what bait is working, which flies are working. It was a full-time deal, but Outside magazine really kept me in the business. Terry would call me every few months. How about something? Come up with an idea. We'll send you someplace. And man, that's a big break for a starting writer. That's a very big break. So.
Many of those pieces are in some collections that you have as well.
Yeah, I have 4 collections of nonfiction. It's actually my favorite writing because it's more or less true.
Now, one of the things I was thinking about is since we're live streaming this, and there are a lot of people who knows where they are, who are watching this. For those of us who come from Southeast Florida, which is where I come from, and where I've spent most of my time, although I've been to Sanibel, why don't you talk a little bit, and you do in your books, the best way that anyone can get a sense of the allure of the Sanibel area is through Randy's books. But talk a little bit about what's kept you there all these years, and what is it about it that you've fallen in love with, about that part of Florida, which is so different than this part of Florida?
Well, that's a good question. Florida is an eclectic state, and everything you can possibly hope for or dread is in Florida. Southwest Florida is very different from the east coast of Florida, and the east coast of Florida is lovely. It's a very different light here. It seems harsher. The odors are different in subtle ways. The people are different. It is, in my opinion, a little faster, more cosmopolitan. The southwest coast, the mangrove coast, is different, historically different. In terms of history, much of southwest Florida's economic success has to do with one thing. It's a fish by the name of tarpon. It's a tarpon. In 1895, the first tarpon ever landed on rod and reel was caught in Tarpon Bay in Sanibel, where I was a fishing guide. 1895, caught by a New Yorker, W.H. Wood. And it changed fishing history. It changed not just the economic history of Southwest Florida, it changed the destiny of Southwest Florida. And here's why. The tarpon was the first big game fish you could catch from a rowboat. Remember, in those days, there were no outboard motors. The first big game fish you could catch from a rowboat. It made headlines in the London Times when W.H. Wood caught this fish. So what was then an outpost became attractive because you could catch a tarpon there. In those years, the moneyed people came to Palm Beach or Miami Beach, and they didn't go to the West Coast, but then sportsmen, began seeking out Southwest Florida. So the Charlotte and Northern Railroad extended passenger service south. Hotels grew up, villages grew up, service industry grew up, restaurants, all because of this extraordinary fish, the tarpon. Moneyed people, such as Baron Collier, instead of going to Palm Beach, he went to Usepa Island, southwest Florida. That was his voting residence. From this island outpost, he built the Tamiami Trail, the first road across the Everglades, because of the tarpon. Baron Collier came to southwest Florida to catch a tarpon. Thomas Edison almost certainly would have built his laboratory somewhere near Palm Beach or Miami Beach, but he loved fishing. He went to Fort Myers and built his laboratory there. Henry Ford, Firestone, Charles Lindbergh, the list goes on and on. The DuPonts, the Vanderbilts went to southwest Florida to catch a tarpon. Southwest Florida is different historically, but also different, as I said, in terms of the subtleties of lights and odors and the mangroves. John Steinbeck had a wonderful line in his book, The Sea of Cortez. No one loves a mangrove. And then he went on to write eloquently about the power and the importance of mangroves. The mangrove coast, it's darker there. It's darker. And it has a history of rum running and drug running. And the natural history is different. But I do adore it. I do. Anyway, so we...
Learned something, and I want to thank you, Randy, for
Thank you, Mitch.
coming tonight. Let's give him a big, big round of
Thank you.
applause.
Thank you.
That's great. I didn't know that.
Thanks, everything. Thanks, guys. Well, let's sign some books.
We've got all of Randy's books. We have his backlist. He's got a lot of them, and we want you to buy some of them tonight. So you can go up front, and Randy will be happy to sign it. And if you're looking in from somewhere other than Florida, if you call the store, the number that's on the screen that you're watching, he'll sign a copy for you too. And we will send it to you with free shipping as well. So how's that?
That's right. You're the best.
Thank you again.